This is Robert with Pioneer Smokehouses, and today we're going to be using the Bradley analog electric smoker to smoke up some wonderful fresh sea bass. Now, the sea bass is a white fish and will cook the same way as cod or halibut or even sturgeon with some minor adjustments, but the sea bass is very forgiving. I am not going for a hot traditional smoke like something you would serve for dinner, but I'm going for more like something like a dry fish smoke where you would seal it and save it and use it as an hors d'oeuvre or as a snack. You could also mix it in with fish dip like cream cheese, a little bit of milk, and some smashed up fish, and it would make an excellent fish dip. So the thing is warming up at this point, and I have counted out 9 of the biscuits. Each biscuit is good for 20 minutes, so 9 of these is 3 hours. I'll go ahead and I put the first one in just to make sure I get it centered right, and then just load them all from there. If something goes wrong with the first one, you can easily get the tongs and move it around. But if you drop a bunch of them in there and they're not lined up, then you'll have an issue getting it straightened up. But like this, we're all good. So I put in those 9, and just for now, I'm gonna put in 1 spacer. I could put that in there, I could remove it if I want to do something different, but I wanna make sure that I don't forget to put the spacer in there and lose that last few minutes. This is gonna run by itself, unchecked, for those 3 hours. So I wanna make sure I get another 20 minutes out of it. The next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and advance 1 biscuit, just so that way I'm getting ready. Now, when I'm ready to put the fish in, I'll do the rest. So let's go ahead and cut to the other part of the video that I filmed yesterday and this morning of preparing the fish. We are inside, and let's go ahead and talk about how I prepare my sea bass before using it. Sea bass is a very simple white fish. Very easy and very friendly to just about any flavor. If you can see here, I've cut it into small pieces that are roughly about 2 inches by 4 inches, or a little bit larger than that. And the fillets are not very thick. Each sea bass has the 2 side fillets, of course, and this is a smaller bass cut into 3 pieces. On a larger bass, you'll be able to cut it into more pieces than that, but most of the fish that we caught yesterday were pretty small. So I will start with the salt. We're going to do a dry brine today. First, we 1/4 cup of salt here, and then we have a 1/4 cup of our favorite Cajun seasoning. Today I'm just using this. I'm not really pushing this brand or anything. It's something I bought at the local store. I tried it and it had a good all-around flavor and not too high of a salt content. If you're more concerned about the salt, use the Spice Hunter seasoning, which is salt-free, a little bit expensive, so you want to make sure. Now, when you do use something that has high salt, like let's say you use Tony's or something, you want to make sure to cut back a little bit of your salt in here. Otherwise, it'll totally absorb into the meat. Next, we're going to have 1/2 a tablespoon of pepper. And then, I'm not going to measure this, but we're going to go a teaspoon of garlic granules and a teaspoon of smoked paprika. Now, there is paprika in all of the Cajun mixes, but we wanted to make sure that we went with a little bit more, especially because, you know, it's smoked paprika. So I've got it all in there, and I want to make sure I get all of that out. And then I'm going to go ahead and mix it in here, and I'll just give that a quick stir. And remember, always non-iodized salt. This is just a standard generic sea salt. And then anything will work, such as pickling salts, which is what I usually use, or some kosher salt. But kosher salt, you might want to grind it down a little bit for this preparation. So I mixed it, and then I'm going to dump it in here just to make sure that I got it good. Then what we're going to do is we're going to put in about 1/3 of the dry mix in the bottom of this container. Remembering what you have here is important because you're going to sprinkle a little bit more on the fish right before it goes into the smoker. If you'd like, you could pre-mix some of it in a bowl or in a shaker, and then you can spread it easily across the top of the fish. I put 1/3 of it into the package, and then I'm going to feed these in there. Now I've got all the fish in there, and I'm going to go ahead and sprinkle the rest of this in here. Now, I'm going to kind of puff the bag open a little bit and seal it. Then I'm going to fold this over, and if you'd like, you could use some kind of a clip. Depending on the quality of your bag and how well it seals, depends on whether you need a clip or not. But now I'm just going to slowly roll this, and that clip didn't work at all. I'm just going to go ahead and slowly roll this to get the fish completely covered. So the bass is a pretty firm fish, so it's not going to fall apart when I do that. But if you have a different type of whitefish that's a little bit softer, you might want to be concerned about that. And I'm going to let the air out. And we have this. This is going to go in the refrigerator for at least 8 hours, but in this case, we're going to be doing somewhere around 12 hours. And I will flip this over the first couple of hours every hour, and then I'll flip it over one more time because I just want to make sure that as the process starts, because liquid will form in here, that we make sure that we keep it really well mixed, and then we'll be able to just flip it a couple of times after that. So going back to this, is that what we'll want to do is we'll want to prepare this in the same ratio that we did before. We don't need a lot. We just want to be able to sprinkle some on top of the fish before we put it in the smoker. And this will be enough right here to go ahead and sprinkle across the top just to add that extra flavor. When it's all done, dry brining, like I said, there will be liquid in the bag, but we'll need to rinse it off to get all of that salt off of there. Otherwise, we will have salt lick fish. And I'm not a big fan of a lot of salt in the first place. And the whole point of the salt is to cause osmosis, which will draw water out. And then after the exit process is completed, water will be drawn back in to create equilibrium between the liquid and the fish. When that water's drawn back in, it will draw the spices in with it. And then this will be the extra touch to go on the top. I'll put this in a shaker and save it for tomorrow. So I went ahead and I let the fish sit overnight in the refrigerator. And the first 2 hours, I flipped it every hour. And then after that, I just flipped it 2 more times. Now, there is liquid in the bag, and that is liquid that came out of the fish. We didn't put any liquid in here. So the salt pulled that liquid out, and then it reversed the process and pulled the seasonings in. And again, like I mentioned earlier, that's called osmosis. I want to let you know that this is a safety to keep your refrigerator from getting all messy. If you put your bag inside a bowl or a dish like this, I like this one because it's flat and allows the liquids to move freely. It'll protect in case you get a bone through your bag or something like that, and then you'll have a huge mess in your refrigerator. So I'm just going to go ahead and set this to the side. And then we'll go ahead and look that over. Now, it didn't end up leaking, but these are some good heavy-duty bags. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to fill this bowl halfway with cold water. Then I'm going to go ahead and dump this fish directly into that bowl. If there's a lot of liquid, you'll want to drain off some of the liquid first, so that way you don't have as much of the brine to deal with. I'm just going to make sure that I get as much of that out before I throw this in the garbage. We're all done with that, and the garbage can's right up here. So this is what we'll be setting the fish on, which is the grill mat, which is by far my favorite accessory. And then we'll be dropping it in the tray, and we're using the Bradley smoker today. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to mix the fish around a little bit, and then I will dump all of this liquid off. And repeat. The idea is to get rid of as much of the salt as possible. The salt has done its job, and if you feel the fish, you can even feel it, and even see, you can even see a little bit of translucency. So for the second batch, I filled it up, and the water is almost completely clear, and you can just see a little bit of stuff. Dumped off half of it, give it a little stir, dump off the rest, and give it a second. Now I'm going to try to place the fish with all the best sides facing up on the grill mat. So sometimes you get a little bit of the skin marks and stuff, and that's not bad, it's just that the seasoning sticks better to the other side. So we'll go ahead and fast forward while I finish this. Now yesterday when I was doing my seasoning mix, I mixed up a little bit more than a tablespoon on the side to sprinkle on top of this. I don't like to have a lot of extra of this around. My 3-2-1-1 spice I use all the time, so I don't mind having a bunch of that around. But we'll just lightly sprinkle this on the fish. We're not trying to kill it, we're just trying to add a little seasoning until this is all gone. If you're worried about making a mess, do it in your sink. You can set a bowl or a plate in your sink to hold the tray up into a nice position and then shake it in there, and all the extra flakes will just fall into your sink, so it'll be easy to clean up. That really does look great. It's just what I wanted, just a light coat. I'm going to go ahead and take a picture. Now when I placed the fish on here, I tried to spread it apart as much as possible. If I had 2 less pieces, it would work exactly the way I wanted, because I'd like to have a little bit more gaps in the edges here to allow the smoke to circulate around it better. Now I'm going to go ahead and place this tray on a cookie sheet so that way I can carry it out there without worrying about it draining. This cutting board would probably work because it has the slots, but I would rather just do it that way. Here's that fish that you saw in that last video, and it's all ready to go straight into the smoker. So the smoker is not quite heated up yet, but it is moving along really fast. So right now we're at 125 degrees. Our cooking temperature today will be 175 degrees. I'm going to go ahead and open this up, which will let out all this heat, but that's okay. I'll mention that I rested this on the counter for about 10 minutes. Now once I've loaded this in the top of the smoker, which is where my thermostat is, you can see the one here in the door and the one that I added, I'm going to advance the biscuits so I can see that they're in position and that we're going to start right away. One there, and then one more time, and it'll come right out to the burner. I always make sure that I put a piece of foil in there to catch all the drippings. Makes cleanup so much easier. You do want to leave a little bit of a gap around it, so don't use a huge piece of foil, just use something that's going to catch most of the stuff, and don't worry about it from there. Let's go ahead and close this. The vent is open all the way, and then I have this little chimney on here just for my convenience. You don't need that, but I like to get the smoke up away from the smoker a little bit, and in my head, I think that it gives more even smoke flow and just kind of chimneys it away from the area where you're standing or cooking. If you're doing it on the ground, it can be a real big problem when you go to stand up next to the smoker. The smoke just pours into your face. When you're doing it elevated and then you have this, the smoke's completely above you. And you can even go longer if you want. Same thing on the ground. If you put on a 4-foot pipe on there, you'd be great. Now this is not attached, but it has a sealant and then it has a couple of holes for screws. Make sure that if you put screws in there that you know where the wiring is inside the unit. Most of the wiring in this unit is in the back, and you can easily remove a couple of screws to access and see that. Now we're in position to start smoking here, and we're just going to watch the temperature and make sure that it keeps going up to the desired temperature. We're going to target 175 for 6 hours, and we want half of that time with direct smoke. After the 3-hour mark, I will check the fish to see what the smokiness is. So it will be edible, of course, but it just needs to have that right amount of smoke. And if it doesn't, I'll add more smoke to it. But for the most part, you're just looking for a nice, good smoke layer and then to have it dry out. So that way it's more shelf stable. Now, if you want it completely shelf stable, you'll want to use a little bit more salt than I did in the preparation recipe, and you'll want to let it cure longer in the fridge. I would recommend at least 2 full days, 48 hours, but you can go longer if you're curing and it won't hurt anything. As you cure, it tends to kind of shrivel up a little bit, but that's just getting rid of all that moisture and replacing it with salt, which is, you know, you're preserving it. We're just a little over 3 hours now, and the smoke has completely stopped. So I'm going to go ahead and add the final ring in and eject the last puck. I wanted to leave it in there until after the normal cycle, but by using the 3 rings, it'll completely clear all of the biscuits out of the burner area. So I went ahead and took a picture, so I'm going to go ahead and pop that up there. And then I'll go ahead and open this and show you in here what we're looking at. There's just a little bit of smoke left inside here, so we kind of just let it all go, which is not good. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take a piece right off the corner here and then just close that back up. And then we'll be able to get an idea of how smoky it is. Now, it's not quite dry enough to where we want it, but boy, it's close. I don't think we're going to make it another 3 hours. Just the right amount of smoke, a little on the salty side. I probably could have went a little less salt, but it's tasting really good. I think that I do need more smoke though. So I'm gonna go ahead and add 3 more biscuits. I'll put in the spacers when I get them out of the pan and let them cool off a little bit. But until then, I'll see you in a couple of seconds. It'll be an hour for me. I took a look a minute ago and it looks like we're ready to pull it out. Now it's still smoking just a little bit, but not much. When I'm done with fish, I like to keep running my smoker for a few minutes afterwards. So if the smoke is completely gone, I'll load more wood chips in the smoker to kind of flush it out a little bit and re-season it. You can see here that this is the fish tray, and I'm gonna let you get a little bit closer look at it here. This is the piece that I took a little bit off of earlier. And I'm going to sample a different piece just because I want to get a fresh perspective here. So here we go. Let's take a look there. So I would certainly cut that salt back a little bit, maybe around half. Good flavor. And the bass is just so mild that it pretty much took all the seasonings and smoke flavors and incorporated it in. The thicker pieces are still a little soft, but the thinner pieces are pretty much well dried out, so they'll be perfect for packaging. And with the amount of salt here, they're going to hold really well. So you'll be able to carry these for 4 hours or so without refrigeration and not even think twice about it. So if you saw anything you like here, the links will be in the description below, and I'll try to get the recipe up. Just remember that if you're salt sensitive, you'll want to cut that salt in about half. And the links for the products that I used, including my favorite accessory, which is a grill mat, are below. Those are affiliate links, so if you use those, I will get compensated. Thank you. And I hope that this gives you a better idea of how to work with your Bradley smoker and get the best out of it. Excellent insulated smoker. I really like that about this one. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.